Tansei, welcome everybody. Acfn, thank you for doing these events. They're very impactful and they help a lot of people. And thank you for opening this event up to the general public. You know, I know the last event that we did together, it was more of a closed event. But, you guys wanted to open it up, and I think that was a really good move. A lot of people need to hear, Indigenous in recovery. There's a lot of our people that really struggle, and they don't know how many of us are doing so well. And, hearing the different perspectives of recovery and how we can recover at any age. My dad is on the docket tonight and today, and, we can recover at any age. There's young people. My daughter Lucy has recovered and is doing well, and she's young. And I think it's just important that our people see that we are doing it and it can be done. And that'll be a theme for the day with the participants who are here. So I just wanted to intro with that. And my name is Bill Ward. I'm the host of these sessions, these online Indigenous in recovery sessions, collaborating Billwardlife with Acfn, Athabasca for Chippewa First Nation. And these will be streamed live on YouTube and also on the Acfn website. My YouTube channel is Billwardlife, Spotify, the UDR cast, and Acfn. If you click on there, you will find the links to these videos. Last month's video will be coming up soon. This month's video will be coming up soon. We will also be doing another event on February 22nd, and that will be live. You can watch my Facebook feed or Acfn's website. They will be building a poster and promoting it. And these things are going to be ongoing as far as I know for now. So I wanted to get into today's session. We have a great session planned, be about 2 to 3 hours of recovery stories of our people. And I wanted to start off with a prayer, and then I'm going to talk about a song, and then I'll introduce our speakers quickly before we introduce our first full speaker. So I'm just going to pray first. Oh, Ai, Creator, Ai. Thank you, Creator. Thank you for this beautiful day. Kahu, Victim Agano, Eagle Spirit of the East, thank you for what you do for us, what you do for me. Kisagampi, some Sun Spirit of the South, I thank you. Victim Agano, hear our prayers today, Creator. Grandmothers, grandfathers. Neogate Wasin, Victim Agano, Four Leggeds of the West, please hear our prayers today. Be with us in health and healing as we share our stories, trying to hit other people's hearts, piercing the pride and ego for healing. Xanap you Uten, gentle wind spirits of the north, Victim Agano, hear our prayers. Please join us today. Xanap you Uten, push us and pull us, be gentle on us, show us what direction we need to go for our healing path. Please allow us to inspire others to take that same path and find the red road. Okawimau, Mother Earth, Victim Agano, hear our prayers. Mother Earth, I ask that you take any negativity that we have, that I have, you put it in the core of yourself and filter that with your earth and all your goodness for good things in this world. Allow that negativity to grow beautiful things. I thank you, grandmothers and grandfathers, for what you've done in my life and what you continue to do in mine and other people's lives. I ask Creator and grandmothers and grandfathers, Musum Kukun, to help us all here on the panel today carry our voice and our message in a good way, in a sacred way, to try to help your kids. I thank you for the opportunity to host this event. I'm going to be talking about I'm going to be talking about a song a little bit that I learned through ceremony. And the song is, it's a personal pipe song. And what the song means is, it means try hard. Don't give up. You're going to make mistakes, but that's okay. I knew the meaning to the song before I got my first pipe. And then I got my first pipe. And when I was getting that pipe, I just knew in my heart, I'm like, okay, this is a big responsibility, and just try your best, Bill. Don't beat yourself up when you make mistakes. And that's part of it, right? But also not to make mistakes on purpose, and try to learn and grow and claim some type of spiritual progress through any mistake and any well-doing that I do well, and look at things and try to keep growing in a good way into, the image and likeness of my Creator, and my Creator is based in loving principles, spiritual principles. And so this song, why it resonates with me is because there's another song, it's called the Sundance Pipe Song, and in that Sundance Pipe Song, it talks about you can have everything you want. You can have whatever you want and anything you want. And the journey from a personal pipe to the Sundance Pipe is a journey of pain, hardship, and joy, and overcoming obstacles and growing into like an authentic version of yourself. And as the result of that journey and trying to seek and do Creator's will, you can have anything you want, because what you want is quite different because of the journey that you've been through and the change that isn't incurred within your heart and your being, that the things that you want won't hurt you or other people anymore. And it's kind of like, as we let go of the things that we think we want through the processes, we actually get what we really want. And what I've learned with working with so many people in my life and my own journey is we just want to be loved, and we want to give love. And when you're the entity of love, you don't need to give love, you are love. And I think that's really what the Sundance Pipe is about. So I'm just going to sing this song, and then I'll sing 2 push-ups, and then we'll get into this itinerary of what we're going to do today. And we'll get our first speaker, September. She's standing by, September Daniels. We'll get her to share a little bit about her journey. So I'm just going to sing this song. Chanu pawane chau pelo da zayo yo hey o gnashma yagna shekedo hey waka ya hey wow hey lo hey O Ganashma Yagna Shekedo Ei Chanu Pawane Chau Pelo Da Zayo Yo Hey O Ganashma Yagna Shekedo Hey waka yo hey wow hey lo hey o ganashma yagna shekedo hey hi and don't ever give up, right? Don't ever give up. Things click when they click, and if you're really on the right path and you're asking Creator for help, the universe has a way of placing the people in your path that can help you. And the lessons need to be learned, though. So anyway, thanks for letting me sing that song and sharing a little bit about the things that I know about, and I know very little. So the itinerary for our session today, it's called Culture and Connection, a Recovery Mini Summit. And I call it Indigenous People in Recovery. The purpose is to help individuals, families, and organizations better understand addiction and the spiritual malady that drives addiction and all self-destructive behaviors. It's a spiritual sickness that we have that drives us to use substances, and most self-destructive behaviors are a sign and a symptom of the spiritual malady. Even resentment, judgment, gossip, these are all symptoms of a spiritual malady that can be medicated, and it's just projection of our own wounds. But it's so widely accepted that we don't know any other way, and it's just what we do. But it doesn't have to be that way. The event philosophy, and one of my philosophies as Billwardlife is my company, adhering to the philosophy of one person, one family, one community at a time. Billwardlife is committed to providing tailored workshops, speaking engagements, and resources to First Nations and Indigenous communities. Our approach is to inspire, educate individuals, families, and organizations. I really truly believe that it starts with the individual who wants to change. That can ripple into the family, and the family can really help the community and organizations. So it's really important that each person takes their own healing journey and responsibility for their own healing journey and not tell everybody else what to do. In the sense, as we focus on our own, we attract people who want that as well. That's the power of the energy of love and authenticity and love for your own self. People love that and they want it themselves. Persevere, strengthen Indigenous culture. You know, from a guy who didn't want to be Indian to a guy who's proud Indian today, Native, Indigenous. I want to preserve what we have, and I want to strengthen my knowledge in our Indigenous ways, and want to protect them and learn more. So because it aligns so much with like love and Creator's will, and that's the way our people were. We lived with love and we did Creator's will. And we had our ways of doing it, and they worked really well. And then things happened, and now we're trying to rebuild them and refine them, and sometimes, you know, in a modern world that's not well. Foster resilience and harmony through modern approaches, cultural practices, and interactive teaching. And I'm big on the modern approaches with cultural practices, with interactive teaching, getting people involved and, you know, really talking and looking at ourselves, looking at each other, looking how we think, and bringing awareness to the darkness. And once the awareness is there, then the darkness can be, you know, put out by the light. And our mission, our goal is to empower individuals, families, and communities to embrace courage, truth, and self-awareness. By sharing personal stories of struggle, growth, and inspire others, we pursue healing, harmony, and authenticity. True transformation lies within. It requires deep desire and commitment to do the necessary work. You know, so many of us will try to change everything on the outside, whether it's relationships, jobs, money, vehicles, places we live, and constantly try to fix our surroundings, when really it's an inside job. And when you're good on the inside, everything on the outside is exactly where it needs to be. And I spent years trying to live with everything on the outside the way that I wanted it, and I was still never content with myself. And my anger would always come up, and different things would come up. But since I did that commitment to do the necessary work and rid myself of a lot of these things, nothing's out of place. And when things are out of place, I know that it's me that's probably disturbed and out of place. And I got to get back in there and do some more ceremony, look deeper within myself, talk to somebody about something. So the event itinerary. So, you know, we have a number of speakers today. We have 4 speakers. We have myself, not a speaker, facilitator. We have Ryder Russell, who will be our first or second speaker. Right now I'm sitting with September Daniels. She is going to be actually the first speaker. We'll go to Russell second. And September Daniels. I met her while I worked at Tsuut'ina First Nation with the wellness team. What I can say about September is her heart is probably one of the biggest hearts I've ever seen. She loves our people. She's so willing and open-minded to learn about where she might be wrong, where she can learn more, where her beliefs might be blocking her. She's always willing to learn about addictions, spiritual malady, look at different modalities and methods to try different things. You know, I think what I really love about her also is she tries different things to learn more about people. And she's one of God's Creator's gifts of servants who has been placed on the earth to help people. And it was funny, we were talking today about this saying that that I've come up with, and it's kind of getting out there in the world of recovery, and at least in my world. We call it the God dope. And she saw a sweater and she's like, what does that mean? Then I explained it. I said, remember when you did alcohol or drugs or, relationships or pornography, and you were looking for that feeling? We get the feeling through the work that we've done on ourselves and then serving God's kids. You know, that feeling that you can't explain? She's like, yeah. I'm like, that's the God dope. It's the dope we were looking for when we did drugs and alcohol and all the other things. And she was like, oh my God, that's so true. I want one of those sweaters. But she ended up taking a different one. And now she's working as a court worker. She's from Stony. And I believe partly Sutena.
Yep.
Sutena and Stony. So without any further ado, I would love to introduce our first speaker, September Daniels. And, let's hear your story. Take it away, September. Thank you.
Listeners, Bill, for having me here. It is an honor to be here and share what I'm going to share today. I will start off from the beginning of my life with addiction, which was I was a little girl and my parents were alcoholics. And I do remember the bad stuff than the good stuff. And we were just like everybody else. We were always hiding under the table, in the closet, not knowing where we are. There's screaming going around. There's times that my older brother took us to the road, and this is the Neaton Valley Reserve. And he'll take us to the road to start walking to our grandparents, which is my dad's parents, and they're the traditional people. Those are the things I just remember by, the bad things and not the good things of it. But my brother, the one I just talked about, he was our savior then. He really did save us as kids that are living in an unhealthy home. He knew what was going on, but he was just trying to protect me and my baby sister. And he did that for years until my parents did sober up and stop drinking. So they became in their recovery. My dad started in rodeo. My mom was a follower. But when my brother was a teenager, about 13, he started drinking. And just drinking at rodeos. And then I drank too. I don't lie. Like when my parents were away, I did go out and drink with my friends in Eaton Valley. I was probably just 12 or 13. But we were left home alone, And I did do drugs at that time too, which was like the weed was bad at that time. Oil was bad. Hash was bad. And I tried all those stuff, even sniffing nail polish, gas, whatever I can just to get that high. And then the alcohol came really bad for my brother, Jason. And he was already an alcoholic at the age 18. And it's really sad because he had a gift of being a cowboy in a rodeo trail. He was well known. But that's where the alcohol started as well. Like Indian rodeo is full of alcohol and drugs. And he got addicted to it. But back then, he didn't know what was going on in his life. Like, we didn't talk about trauma. We didn't talk about mental health. We didn't talk about what the shit we went through until he passed away. So he lived in the streets he wasn't homeless. That's the thing. He had a home to go home to in Morley. But he chose to be in the city because of his addiction. And plus, he had more support in the city streets than he did back home in Morley. So the year of 2012, we didn't hear from him for a couple of months, and we knew there was something wrong. He usually comes home during winter, like during Christmas time, but he didn't come home. So we went out looking for him. But even then, we didn't know anybody to help us in the city because we had no clue who was involved in the city to help people. Like, this is us people from living on the reserve. And we come into the city, and it's like, where do we go? Who can help us? But we did it on our own until they found a human by the river in Stanley Park that was frozen. So they couldn't recognize him until they identified him through his dental. So it was my brother that was found there. And afterwards, from there, like, I still had no clue why, Like, I think I was more angry than just being sad for him I was angry. Why you had to go? You know, why did you do this to yourself? Why this? Why? I was blaming him for what he was going through. And then that ripple effect that he was going through, it didn't come to me, but it came to my daughter, my oldest daughter. And I'm not saying it's him that did it, but it's just like that cycle of unhealthy, you know, going through that cycle of unhealthiness that affected me and my daughter. Not from him, but from my daughter's dad. So getting into a relationship at a young age, I was probably 16 and I was a young mom. And the reason why I needed to leave that environment because I needed to get away from my parents in the reserve because it's like there was nothing there for us to look forward to. So I just became like a young mom at that age and thinking this is the best thing that's going to happen to me, which was not. A year in that relationship, I was already experiencing domestic violence, but I didn't know what that was then. So every time that happened, I drank. He'll leave, I'll go drink. If he drinks, I drink with him. So I did my drinking in that way, just to numb my pain of going through domestic violence, but not knowing that it really affected my oldest because she was abused with me and not knowing, you know, not recognizing what's going on, not even recognizing I was being abused. I thought that was normal. Like normal relationship is from abuse, drinking, drugs, being alone, being a young mom, being abandoned. That was the normal that I've been through, and it's just not me. There's so many women and men have been going through that. So years into that, 18, 20-year relationship going into that, and finally decided to leave, me and my two daughters. And I thought, okay, I'm free now. Like nothing's going to happen to me anymore. Like he's not going to hurt me anymore. But not knowing that I was internally damaged. My spirit, my emotion, everything that I can think of that I was damaged. So moving forward from there, I voluntarily put myself in a domestic violence program for women. I had no clue why I was doing that. I was afraid, I was alone. And it was a colleague that mentioned that, like something for women that's going through this kind of thing. But I still didn't know what domestic violence was until I took that program. And I came out of it telling myself, you know, nothing was ever my fault. But there was so much work to do, though, to heal me from that. And I used that to drink. You know, every time I was triggered, every time, like, anything that I know that wasn't good for me, I go drink. And not knowing that my daughter was suffering all that time. So she ends up drinking at 16, 17. Still have no clue why until like I was starting to coordinate and facilitating domestic violence for Tsuut'ina and Stoney communities. That's where I've learned a lot. Like I did my healing journey through that for me, you know, and I did my work through that. But I still didn't focus on my kids, my kid that was becoming an alcoholic. And then moving forward from there, you know, and I still didn't know. I was a mom that lectured my daughter, why are you doing this? Why are you always drinking? You should just quit, go back to school. And she'll shut down or she'll shut me down. And then when I started working for Tsuut'ina Outreach and Wellness Team, that's when I met you. And where it really opened my ears, not my eyes, was more my ears to listen, was when you told me about the spiritual warfare, what people are going through that are alcoholics and addicts. And this is where at the Simon House, we went to that opening. And the way you said it was very straightforward. And that's the night that I was at home and I'm like, oh my God, you know, like, I just needed to hear something like that. So from there, it was still a lot to learn though, you know, like I tried my best and it's so hard to like, you can't just fix things overnight. And that was me. I'm a person like that. It's like I have to fix everything. I was controlling my life. I was controlling my daughter's life. And that never helped. Control. We're not supposed to control, but I didn't know. I never put anything in Creator's hand that time. I just put everything in my hand to handle it, to fix everybody's mistakes or fix my daughter that's an alcoholic. And then I started studying more through my work at that time. And then what really helped me is when I was interacting with our own people in the streets that are suffering with how my brother was suffering. That really opened like a big, huge difference for me, because this is what my brother was going through back 20 years ago. But nobody knew. We didn't know. Nobody educated us. All we wanted to do was blame. And that's what we were doing. We were blaming him. And after that first month doing outreach, I just had that drive. Like, I need to go out there. I have to go out there. But part of me, and this is like honestly, part of me, it felt like I was looking for my brother out there, because I don't think I had closure. And every time when I was out there looking at people, talking to people, stoning people especially, I'm like, I wonder if my brother's around here. You know, that was my thought. And I'm like, no, like he's gone. But like how we say, Creator put us in these places to do the work. And then for me to do that work, it's the closure that I needed, right? And then, so I had that closure. I went to his grave, finally went to the grave site. I started crying, you know, shedding my tears on him and telling him, you know what, I didn't know. I didn't know what, because I didn't understand him. Now it's for me to understand my daughter better. So my focus was to understand my daughter better, the reason why she was sick. And I knew it, but I wanted her to tell me, you know, that things happened to her. Maybe while me and her dad were drunk. You know, I know we left her in a room. We know her dad spanked her so hard. You know, there's so much trauma in there that she was in. And then, of course, you know, I reached out to programs and they sent her to treatment, which was great. And then first time around, 2 months after that, sober and relapse all over again. And then second time she went to treatment again, maybe a couple of years after that. Same thing, you know, 2 months after it, she relapsed. But that's when the second time around, that's when I realized I'm not going to say anything to her. I'm just going to listen. I just need to listen to her from now on. And then when she came home and she's like, I want to go to AA's, Mom. I'm like, okay, well, I'll come with you. She's like, really? I said, yeah, like, I would like to know what AA is all about. And so I started going to AA's with her for 2 months. And I was scared because I didn't know what AA's were. But she knew because she did it in treatment. So she guided me through that. She's like, well, if they ask you who you are, you can just say you're my mom. I was like, well, I am your mom. But she's like, no, you know what I mean. I said, yeah. And then the first time around in the AA, when they asked me who I was, I said, well, I'm Kayleen's mom, and I'm just here to support her. And then there was an elder that was sitting there at that time, and he said, you know what, we don't see a lot of that. Not a lot of family support come in with people that are in AA, that are in recovery. And he really acknowledged me for that. And then a couple weeks later, that gentleman passed away. He was at the Walking Eagle, and he passed away a couple weeks after that. So there's times that, you know, you hear things from people that unexpectedly, right? Because that's what you need to hear to move forward in a good way and how to help your people better. So that was that. And then she relapsed. She did. And she relapsed pretty hard. That was back in 2024. And she was killing herself because she was in the hospital all the time. She couldn't get out of her alcohol. She was in pain all the time. And I didn't really do anything but just to be there for her. Every time she called the ambulance, I'm waiting at the hospital. Every time she's at the hospital, I'm walking in. And then back in August 2024, like I've been turning to the Word of God and our ways, both. So I turned to our ceremonies, and I had an elder uncle to come to my house here in the city. And I said, can you come pray for Kayleen? Can you call her spirit for me, please? Because if not, she's going to kill herself. And we did. We had a ceremony for her. Very powerful. And what happens a month later, she comes home. And she's been sober since then. It's going to go on in 6 months. She's been in her sobriety all on her own. So now when I've been going through this personally with this journey as a young mom, wasn't into alcohol and drugs too at once, wasn't domestic violence, being a single parent, I went through all my struggles too, but God was with me all that time. But I never utilized him because I was too busy controlling my life. Now I leave everything up to Creator's hand. He has to control our life. He's waiting there for us and say, you know what, once you're done controlling your life, I'm right here. Give it to me. So that's what I've been learning now. And I tell families and people I've been helping, just put your prayers into Creator. Just talk to Creator because He's the one that has the more power to help us through everything. So now with my daughter being in recovery, I have a drive to help a lot of people that are going through that. Like we were just talking about that, your word there, God's dope. When you explain that, I'm like, I'm just done explaining myself to people why I'm trying to help people. But they're not going to know until they do the work, until they go out there and do the job, right? So I'm just a big advocate now for helping our people, more of the treaty area. I'm always reaching out to them. I've been hosting these little events in the city core, feeding our people, collaborating with an outreach workers to do a round dance. And this just is more for the people downtown and families. The priority for that is to have the communities to come into the core and find their families. Even if can't find them, just come, dance for them, pray for them, because our ways are like, we call our spirits home. Since we were kids, we always had to call our spirits home. And our people out here, they're still children. So we do have to call their spirits home. Yeah.
That's amazing, September. Thank you for sharing that story and your journey and why you endeavor to serve. And we both know why. Because it's our duty and it makes us feel good. And you just never know who you're going to help on the journey of serving. And the point of life is, I don't think, to just take and grab and get what we want, but to give away something that's from our heart. And so that's what you do. I'd like to ask you a couple questions about your journey. When you were being a mother and your daughter was in total active addiction, were you were you telling her what to do, and did you think she had a choice?
No. I mean, I didn't think she had a choice because, like I said, I was trying to be in control of her life. When she was actively in her addiction, I was the one that's trying to change her. Not even asking her, what is it that you want? And that's what I mean. Like I was controlling. I was a control mom, thinking that if I just control her, she's going to get well. But I've never asked her anything. So I didn't think she had a choice, but just to do what I was telling her to do.
And then when she wouldn't do what you wanted her to do,
I got more upset.
And you tried to redouble your efforts at more control?
Yeah. And I kept reaching out to people to help me take her to treatment, I was trying to do that for her, but she didn't want it. But just like as a parent from coming from my parents, they tried to control my brother. I remember that. He was an alcoholic and they tried to control him in everything, but it never worked. And then yet when he's sober, they give in. It's like, okay, well, I'll give you a truck now if you don't drink. I'll give you this if you don't drink. It's like they were bargaining with him, but that made things worse. And I was trying to do that with my daughter, not knowing that I was following that cycle of how my parents were parenting an alcoholic. That makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. And so along your journey, you've done a lot of healing on your own, right?
I have. Yeah.
How did you primarily do that? Through the work that you did, or did you seek out outside help or ceremony, or how was the bulk of your healing done?
It was hard because I was living in shame especially when I left her dad, and because no one knew what was going on behind closed doors with the domestic violence, right? So everything was my fault. And I walked out of there with shame and guilt, and I couldn't talk to my family. I couldn't tell my family what was going on. I couldn't reach out for ceremonies because I felt like I was not clean enough to do it. So I secretly asked for help, and I just reached out to one person here in Sutton, and she's still my great friend. She actually helped me get into a door and then told me, go in there and just do what you got to do. And that's that domestic violence program. That's where I started my healing because I had to understand myself better first. But like I said, it was a lot of work to do, though.
Awesome. So if you had one message for maybe parents or people that don't understand, what they're dealing with, what would be your message to parents or other workers who are trying to help people but maybe don't understand?
The message I would give is to reach out to people that know what they're doing. Like, for instance, like yourself, Bill, and other people that are like that too, that actually understand the people, that how we help them. Like when we talked about, we can't keep explaining ourselves the feeling of when we help others. But if a worker wants to do that work, they can talk to us, or actually they can actually talk to their own community member and sit with them. All you got to do is just listen to them and their stories, and then just continue to keep helping them until you really, really understand them and not give up on them.
And not give up on them.
Yeah.
That's one thing that you never do.
No. I go out of my way, honestly. Like, my priority is always like helping our people, because just me personally, I want their cycles to break, because there's a brother and sister out there, uncle, auntie, mom. The sad part is one time when I went in outreach, I seen elderly people from Siksika on the streets, and they were using meth. And I was talking to, because that broke my heart, elderly people. And I asked him what they were doing out here. I said, well, they were alcoholics, but because of the alcohol price have went up, drug is cheap now, so they got hooked on the drugs. And that made me wanted to do, like, you know what, this got to stop. We need to help our own people. Like, that's what made me say we, meaning that us Indigenous people have to help our own people to get well and not to give up on them.
Yeah, it's so sad seeing our elderlies out on the streets using these drugs and drinking, and they're elders and they should be living, I guess I shouldn't say they should. It would be my wish that they would be living a good, contented later years in their life, using their wisdom to help younger people and all people. Anyway, I thank you so much for coming and supporting the Indigenous in recovery and doing what you do. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Hi.
Thank you.
Tansei. Our second guest is Russell Goodrider from Kayanai, down southern Alberta. We're based in Calgary. We call it the recovery capital of Canada, and it's just so strong here. I recommend anyone that wants to get sober to come here. So Russell, I know him as Ryder King, and he's just been an amazing transformation that I've been able to watch right from the start. My dad and I used to do these healing and talking circles. Well, we still do them, but he was in one of the sober living houses, and that's where I first met him. And, today he's a pillar in the community. He's a pillar for our people. He shares his message when asked. He does the things that he needs to do for his own sobriety, and he really inspires other people's sobriety. He's got quite a story. So, I think without any further ado, we will introduce Russell Goodrider. Russell, take it away.
All right, thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me. Nistu Nataniko Russell Goodrider. So my name is Russell Goodrider. I'm from the Blood Reserve. I'm 41 years old, and tomorrow I'll be in recovery for 3 years. and it's all been possible through, the connections that I've made, you know. But I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if I hadn't gone through a really strenuous battle in my life growing up, and that started as a young kid, growing up often on the reserve, and coming from, it's basically like two worlds, where my mother's Blackfoot, and my dad was non-Indigenous, so he's not from the reserve. So, growing up, I had to, navigate myself through two worlds, which was really hard, because I didn't fit in either one of them, and it left me really confused. So, whenever I'd go to the reserve, my cousins and friends down there, yeah, even as a young kid would, always tease me and, tell me I'm not, they would say, "You're not Indian, you're white." And, that really hurt, 'cause I really felt left out by them, It was hard because I loved them, when you're young, those relationships you build are crucial. And then on the opposite side, when I was with my dad, I went through a lot of racism, not so much as like when I was prior to school, but once I hit school, my first year in kindergarten's when the racism really started. And, I was got called a lot of derogatory names, and, that messed with me as well. Growing up, I'm the youngest of 9 kids, and I'm the only one that's alive today. And, that's due to me losing all my siblings either to murder and suicide and, poor health due to addiction. My brother was murdered while they were drinking, and, that really took a big toll on me and my siblings. My siblings fell even farther into their addictions, and they were stuck, dealing with the same pain that I was feeling. Only thing is I didn't understand it, but they did. But they didn't know how to cope with it, and their way of coping was pills and alcohol. And that sadly, each one of them lost their battle to that. And growing up, that gravely affected me. Whenever I would be on the reserve with my mom, it was always a lot of people drinking and I'm going to say raising hell. It was never a safe environment, for the most part of it. Whereas when I was with my dad, when he passed away, he was 45 years sober, and he always used to hint little things to me, and I never realized, like, all these little talks and things that he had to say, until it was probably about like 2 months ago. I was sitting in a AA meeting, and I realized, hey, like, I remember hearing about this, or something close to this, and it was eye opening, it really was. So yeah, growing up, with all that, I'd always see people drinking, and when I was on the reserve, and it was scary, to be honest with you, because there was a lot of fighting and yelling. And I remember, like, one time me and my cousins, we took off to this field, and we just sat in this field in the tall grass and just sat there just waiting for the yelling to stop, so we could go back. And sometimes it wouldn't stop till nighttime. We'd have to go somewhere else. And so I got curious what that was, and I remember sitting on my mom's lap one time in the middle of a party, and they're all laughing, and people start passing out. And I remember turning around and grabbing that bottle and picking it up and just taking a drink. And I remember that how it tasted. It tasted so bad, but it, like, did something to me, and it threw me off, and it I don't know what it was. Maybe that was the first part of my my personality becoming addicted to it. the surroundings and everything, and I slowly started stealing their drinks. By the time I was 8 years old, I we moved from this small little village in it's called Cowley, Alberta, just a small little place. We moved to the Crow's Nest Pass, and I really got along with this one kid. He remember he lived over the hill from me, and he kind of came from like the same background with like alcoholic parents and everything. And I remember, you know, we really shared a lot. A lot of I'm gonna say a lot of baggage and things like that, right? Due to like the alcoholism in our family that it was. So he would steal beer and I would steal beer, and this is in third grade, and at lunchtime, instead of sitting with all the other kids, we'd take off and go drink beers, right? And that's not right. No 8-year-old should be doing that. And it just kind of became a regular norm. And I remember getting in trouble. We got caught, and we kind of slowed down for a bit, and it was what it was at that time. And as we got older, and he became my drinking buddy and my best friend. And sadly, me and him, we really influenced a lot of people around us to drink as well. And with drinking, being that young, not being able to control ourselves, and myself, coming from a lot of the intergenerational trauma that I possessed, due to my childhood and all the trauma and stuff going on with my siblings, with my brothers, the abandonment of my biological mother, right? I started acting out, and that acting out got me to a place where I went to a place that would forever change my life, and in the most negative way possible, and that was a place called Lethbridge Young Offender Center, and I started becoming a product of the youth justice system. I was constantly in jail for assaulting people and break and enters and driving offenses, and while I was in there, you wouldn't think that like that gang life would be that big in a youth system back in the mid 90s, but it was pretty big, and I ended up joining a gang and getting caught up with that. And I spent the majority of my teenage years in and out of the justice system. I've been from one side of this province to the other, right? And I think that I've spent more time inside than I have living a normal life. And but I don't even know what normal is. At that time I didn't know what normal was. And it's just today that I'm starting to live that normal life and starting to understand that, right? So as I was stuck in that lifestyle, I made my way to bigger, scarier places, which eventually ended up in the penitentiary. And it wasn't until I went there that I ended up being introduced to heroin, because by the time I was 16, I was addicted to morphine, 16, 17 years old, addicted to morphine and Tylenol 3s and Tylenol 4s, and basically anything I could get my hands on that would take me away from the pain I was feeling inside, all the confusion of who I was. I didn't know who I was, and it's tough being transitioning, going through puberty and everything like that, not knowing who you are and thinking that once puberty starts calming down that you're like, okay, I still don't know who I am, or what I'm gonna do. So after I got out, after I finished doing my time in BC, I came back to Alberta, and I got into a relationship where I was I would say I was like I was in an abusive domestic relationship, right? And it wasn't a good relationship, and so eventually I ended up like going back to jail. And you know, like when I did time out in BC, you know, like I wasn't part of the gangs out there, right? But as soon as I came back to Alberta, you know, and I started doing time back out here, you know, of course my old gang was gonna be there, and you know, and so I really got caught up with that, and you know, I just continued on a downward spiral, you know, and that spiral, you know, right back to it, you know, like I be in jail for God knows a year, you know, 15 months, you know, whatever it was, or you know, start picking up big time again, and you know, get back out, and you know, that's no life to live, you know. And you know, eventually, you know, my alcoholism got so out of hand that you know, I ended up actually on the streets here in Calgary, you know. And I remember sitting there being like, what am I doing here? Like, you know, like you know, I'm an iron worker. I'm a construction worker. I'm a father. You know, I used to be a husband. You know, a drug dealer. You know, like growing up, I sold drugs. You know, and that was like a big part of my identity of who I was. Right. So to end up on the streets homeless, you know, with that ego removed, but still having so much, I'm going to say false pride, because you know, I was too proud to admit that I was homeless, or to let anybody know, or to even ask for help, right? And it kept me spiraling farther and farther down that rabbit hole, you know. You know, when I hit rock bottom, and I remember doing that and sitting there and being like, man, like this is bad, like looking around and standing outside of the homeless shelter. And I remember I made it inside, and I was so like dope sick and everything, and so tired and hungry. And I remember they're like, "Are you using?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So they're like, "Okay, you got to go to this side." It was the intox side. And I remember getting in there and looking around, and there's like, I don't even think there was a mat there for me. And they just gave me the sheet and told me to find a spot. And I remember like laying on that cold concrete floor. And, you know, it's like, I'd felt that feeling of that cold concrete floor, you know, sitting in jail cells, you know, sitting in RCMP cells, you know, all through those years of growing up. And it was just like, I had this little epiphany. I'm like, you know, maybe I should be in jail, or maybe like this is not my life, you know. And I remember getting up and like hearing everybody getting sick and moaning, and it was so bad to hear that, you know. And it's you know, I look back and I'm like, I feel bad for all those people, you know, because that's still happening today, right? And I imagine it's happening even worse today. But I remember getting up and like walking out of there, throwing that sheet down, walking out, and being like, I'm never gonna do this again. And I remember you know, I walked out and I went back to, you know, I went to go get more drugs and do my thing, right? And you know, there'd be times I'd like walk around for like days and like, you know, not do anything. Like, and I didn't have ID, so it was really hard to find somebody to rent a hotel room for me. You know, it's like the luck of the draw. The odd time I would find somebody. So you know, it got to being like on that couch surfing kind of thing, and you know, there were so many times that like people would see me and I would like turn around and go the other way, because didn't want people that, you know, knew me from back home to see who I was, right? Who I'd become. And, you know, you would never like look at me and tell that I was homeless, you know. I always tried to keep up my appearance and everything. But, you know, when you go from being 180 pounds to like 120 pounds, you know, your face is all sunken in. It's kind of hard to hide, right? You know, so I ended up, you know, skip forward a little bit longer, you know, closer to today's time. You know, I just remember like coming to a point after being in the hospital 3 times, you know, basically on my deathbed, you know. Ended up contracting endocarditis, and I was in the hospital for 4 months, you know. And that was, you know, it got to the point where I was using drugs intravenously, like on the daily, and it just took a toll on my body. And I got out of the hospital that time, and that was in 2019. And I remember thinking, yeah, I'm going to quit. And, that lasted a whole 2-3 days. And, I was right back at it, and even when I was in the hospital, I was still doing other drugs, but I wasn't doing my main drug, right? And I remember it was very short lived. And, I was right back in the mix again, only this time having housing, I remember, ending up in the hospital again. And, this time it got to the point where I ended up having I had 4 tubes coming out of my lungs, 2 in each lung as drainage tubes because I had so much infection in my lungs from smoking fentanyl and crystal meth and shooting it, right? Like those drugs do a number on your body and they attack your lungs and all your organs. And, I remember getting out and, you think that'd be enough to stop somebody, right? And, it wasn't, and, like one thing I forgot to mention is like, I have 8 beautiful children, right? And all through this, I hid from them, I distanced myself and, because I didn't want them to see who I was because, I wasn't their dad anymore. I was still their father, but it broke my heart to think if they ever seen me face to face, because I wasn't even a shadow of who I was when they seen, when they were growing up and when they're younger. Because I hid my addiction really well from them. So yeah, I got out of the hospital and less than a year later, and by the grace of God, and this is gonna sound crazy, I got hit by a car. And if it wasn't for that car and me being like so dope sick and going to pick up again, if that car didn't hit me, I don't know where I'd be today. I'd probably be dead, but that car saved me in that sense, I made it to the hospital and, I got transferred to another hospital and, I was in there for about like a month and I remember being like, is this enough? I think this is enough. And I started having those flashbacks of my life. And I remember like getting to that point of desperation. I'd actually kind of started to feel desperate. And, because I'd hit so many rock bottoms and, I would accept that rock bottom and I would sink even farther and farther down to the next one, until I was like, how am I going to get out of this? I remember like looking up into the sky one day and just being like, man, like if I could just stare at the sky every day and just not have to put my head down and look at my surroundings, and just get lost in the clouds, I'd be okay, in that sense, but you can only do that for so long, and, I got released from the hospital and I was out for a bit and, I could feel my, by that time I knew when my body was, getting close to rough shape again. And I remember getting back to the hospital and the doctor telling me, he's like, if you don't quit doing what you're doing, like, don't start taking care of yourself. And, by that time I'd already got myself on the methadone program. And, I was often on the methadone program like throughout my life, and Suboxone and stuff. And I remember like sitting there and him telling me, like the next time you come in to the hospital like this, he's like, you better make arrangements. You better call he's like, do you have kids? I'm like, yeah. He's like, then you better call them and let them know that you're not going to be leaving you're not going to be leaving the hospital, and that hit me hard, that hit me so hard. And I'm like, holy effer, man. I'm like, it's a big reality check. And, they admitted me and at that point, I put myself in early heart failure and my organs were all shutting down. And, I remember the doctor putting nitroglycerin packs on my shoulders to, for my heart. And it was a big wake up call. And that was that wake up call, I remember sitting there and, I did my time. I got healed up and I remember they were going to release me from the hospital and the social worker came up and she's like, you have somewhere to go? And I'm like, yeah, I do. But in my head, I'm like, do I really? I'm like, I do, but I don't want to go back to that lifestyle. And, I remember calling detox and being like, like, I really need help. You guys have a bed? And they're like, no, we don't. And I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh, man. I called the other one. They're like, you're going to have to come wait outside in the morning. And I'm like, I don't have till the morning, in that sense. And social worker, so after that was, in the time after she left, I called detox and she came back and she's like, hey, they're going to release you in like an hour. And I'm like, she's like, you have somewhere safe to go? And I'm like, and I don't know where this voice came from, it's just like this scared little boy inside of me, he's like, it came out like, I need help. I'm going to die, I need to go to detox. I need to do something. I don't want to live like this anymore. And she kind of looked at me and she's like, whoa, kind of caught her off guard, because I'd been dealing with the social worker like over the years at the hospital and stuff. So she'd always see me go back out to addiction and never ask for help. So this time when I asked for help, she's like, all right, I'll be back. And she went to go make a call and she came back and she's like, well, she asked me, she's like, have you called detox? And I was like, yeah, I did. And they don't have any beds. And she's like, okay, I'll be back. And she left and she came back and she's like, well, you're just in luck because I got you a bed tonight at 9. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah. She's like, she gave me a taxi voucher and I remember she wrote on it in big letters, no stops, one way. And I remember like having those last minute jitters and like thinking, should I stop somewhere and pick up, and that little voice inside me just kept telling me like, no, don't do it, And I did, and I made it to detox, and it's kind of like where my recovery story really started. Was that day, and I remember getting to detox, and first place I called was a treatment center. First treatment center I called, I called there twice a day. I would call and be like, hey, this is Russell Goodrider calling to do my daily check-ins, and then I'd call back and be like, oh, I'm just calling to make sure that you guys got my message, and really determined to get my name out there. And sometimes I'd even leave like a 5-minute long message, and it's crazy because when like that place helped me so much. And I met my first sponsor there, and he was actually in the program. Well, obviously he was in the program, but like he'd went to Simon House as well, and he was actually one of Bill's sponsees, and I can't mention his name. I don't have a ROI, so I can't do that right now. But I remember like asking him like and I'd sit there at meetings and I wouldn't put my hand up for like the first week, 2 weeks, and I just watch everybody and not sure of what was gonna come, right? And I remember finally I put up my hand and I'm like, hey man, I was like, I need a sponsor, and he's like, come talk to me later. So I was like, and it took me a lot of courage to say that, And I went up to him and he's like, oh, I could be your temporary sponsor. I got a lot of people that I'm sponsoring right now. And I'm like, all right. So I met him the next week and, kind of told him my story. And he's like, I'll be your sponsor, And I was like, oh, right on, because, like I just had that, he just had that, he had something that I wanted, right? Like he had that glow to him where he was like, he took his life back and, he was like living this life that, that appealed to me, and, they always say like, when you're looking for a sponsor, and supports, like, find that person that has something that you want, and he did, right? He had a solid recovery, and that's what I wanted, that's what I needed. So, I went through treatment and, I really applied myself, and I remember when I first got in, to my spiritual connection back to my culture, right? Like I remember being frustrated and calling my sponsor and being like, hey, this guy's really making me mad. Like he's always like leaving dishes around and I'm always having to clean them up. And I'm like, I'm not his maid, and none of us other guys are his maid. And he's like, well, why is it bothering you? I'm like, because he's doing that. He's like, well, no, you got to look at the bigger picture, He said, it's probably reminds me of something that you do. And I didn't think of it that way, He's like, and I remember him telling me, he's like, pray for him. And it threw me off. And I'm like, pray for him for what? He's like, just pray for him, even if you don't mean it, you know. He's like, I want you to pray for him every day. And eventually you'll mean it. And I remember I used to like, I remember my roommate, I felt like I was still kind of like real proud to like, you know, pray in front of somebody. And I remember like telling my roommate, I got down on my hands and knees. I'm like, hey, you want me to pray for you? And he looked at me, he's like, yeah, please. And I'm like, all right. So, you know, that's how I like started, you know, praying. And then I started like getting back into smudge and, you know, sweats and, you know, started finding my culture and getting back in touch with it, right? Because like growing up when I was younger, like I'm not going to say my whole childhood was bad because it wasn't, you know, but like, you know, I touched on some, you know, stuff that I touched on what led to my addiction, right? You know, but I also had a lot of culture, you know, in my life growing up. And, you know, when I really got into addiction, I really lost it, you know, because I lost myself. And I made it to, I remember making it to like 3 months and I was feeling not really confident, but I was starting to feel proud of myself, you know, like I started feeling that change, you know, and I was like doing my step work and, you know, going to meetings every day, sometimes twice a day. And I remember like always being that person in treatment that like was always writing notes while other people were like goofing around. And like you could kind of tell who was there for a roof over their head and, you know, who really wanted that change, you know. And like I was one of those people that wanted that change because, you know, I'd finally hit that rock bottom, you know, and it was sufficient enough for me to want to change, that I needed to change and that I did change, you know. And I started building this relationship with my creator, you know, and, you know, just turning my life over to him every day, you know, like creator has given me so much in my life. And, you know, I've been able to give my, you know, I was able to work things out with my ex-wife and, you know, we got back together and, you know, I got my kids back and, you know, I get to be a part of their life, you know, they get to have their dad back and, you know, I get to be a good husband and, you know, and just had a baby back in June and, you know, she's my world, right? My whole family's my world, you know. But, you know, like if you would have told me 3.5 years ago that would have had this, I would have laughed at you, you know. I would have told you I'd be dead in the next 2 weeks. Because I probably would have been, you know. And, you know, I'm just so grateful, you know. And like I wasn't aware that like there was so many resources for people out there. Like there's so many different meetings. There's like Alcoholics Anonymous and, you know, Cocaine Anonymous, Crystal Meth Anonymous, Opiates Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, you know, Sex and Love Anonymous. There's everything anonymous, you know. Like there's so many supports out there, but, you know, in some places, you know, like it's harder to reach, you know, but like if you honestly go online and you like, you know, you do a little bit of research, you know, like majority of these meetings have Zoom codes, right? You can attend remotely, you know. All you got to do is just log in and you're in there, right? And there's so many supports and so many people out there that are willing to help, you know, and I love that, you know. And, you know, they didn't, you know, back when AA started, you know, like I don't think they ever really thought that like there'd be as an abundance of meetings, like a different, you know, because it started out as AA, you know, and there's so many other groups that, you know, that's built off that, and that's saving lives, you know, and it's beautiful, you know, because we're able to reach those people, you know. It doesn't matter what walk of life they come from, you know, what they've been through, you know, we're always there to support them, you know. We'll never turn them away, right? And, you know, like, I was really fortunate enough to, like, go through the program, and when I was done treatment, I was able to get myself back into school, and, you know, from there, I turned around and, you know, I went to school, and I got my diploma in addictions, and, I started helping people, and I put in I did a lot of service work, in my first year and even in my second year, right? My second year is coming to an end in less than 24 hours. So, I'm hitting those 3 years at midnight, and I'm feeling so accomplished, right? And it's like, that first year you always get those monthly reminders of like, yeah, you made it. And then, the second year you get an 18-month chip, and then you get your 2-year chip. And they say like after your first year, the work really starts, right? And it does, right? It really does. And you know, you just got to put in that work, and you just got to be willing to do whatever you have to do to save your life, and keep moving in that direction. And I'm really honored to work in the addictions field now. I'm an intake coordinator at a Simon House Recovery Center here in Calgary, and if anybody's ever struggling out there, and they need somebody to talk to or somebody to help them, like pick up that phone and just reach out to me, because I'll go that extra mile for you, and for anybody, because that's what people did for me. And if it wasn't for people like that, I don't know where I'd be, and I say that a lot, like I don't know where I'd be without all the supports. So I get to work with guys coming into treatment, and get to watch them, from it's like basically from the first day of their. To me, I always tell them it's like your recovery didn't start when you walked into the door. Your recovery started when you picked up that phone and you called me, and a lot of them, I get to see move forward and get reunited with their families, and they start chairing meetings, and start being like little pillars in their community, like I've become, and like Bill has become. And there's so many people that are striving, and it's all because we support each other, and without that, like, this world would be an ugly place, and like, Calgary is the recovery capital of Canada, and like, I remember I'd always hear Bill say that, when I first started listening to his podcast, and I didn't really understand it, like, and I was like, until I really thought about it, I'm like, oh yeah, like, where else do you have so many meetings in a day, like, or in a week? It's like, I know like back home, it's like almost unheard of, like there's minimal meetings, right? So yeah, like, like Bill mentioned, like if you ever need recovery, come to Calgary if you're able to, it's the capital, and there's a lot of us here that are here to help you guys. So I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this, and hear a part of my story, and I hope to hear from you guys too as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bill. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, bro. Thank you so much. That was amazing. As maybe some of the watchers or listeners aren't aware, the day that we actually recorded, I forgot to press record. That's why I have people to help me, because sometimes left to my own devices, I don't make things happen the way that they should. So thank God for the people that are working behind the scenes. And today it's Tamara, and I have others, and we always have to have other people helping us, right? And in life, right, it's one of the biggest things that we wouldn't do before we got here. We wanted to do everything ourselves and not tell on ourselves and not admit certain things. And today, we're re-recording this episode, and I'm just so grateful that you came back, and September came back the other day. And these messages are important.
Yeah.
And like the heart that I felt in this one again today, and the other one was also beautiful, like, so I appreciate you and appreciate that, and appreciate the people listening, appreciate Acfn for doing what they do, because these are messages that hit people when they need to hit people. So thank you, Acfn. So can you maybe speak to how important it is when you first get sober, because you go to treatment, all these things,
Yep.
the environment that you surround yourself in? So many people, I'm going to say our people, our Native people, and all people, but primarily I'm going to talk about Native people today.
Yep.
they'll find treatment. Maybe they find detox and then treatment, and then they go back home.
Yeah.
And not all, but most people relapse. And I really truly believe it's because the change of thinking and perception and, the psychic change, as we call it, hasn't really occurred to the degree that it needs to sustain long-term recovery. And I think that happens in large part when you're in the environment with other people that are doing the same thing, and you don't go back to the subconscious patterning that you don't even know, and it takes you back out. What's your take on environment in recovery?
Yeah, that's so true. Like, if you think about it, like, you get to treatment and there's, depending on the program, right? Some programs are 42 days, some are 90, some are, the ones kind of further away are kind of a little bit longer, right? You get you're lucky if you get like the 1 year programs, there's a few out there. But I think that, like, the first 3 months, you're just kind of like scratching the top of the surface, right? And, you get up there and you start becoming self-aware of everything, right? But after that 3 months, you're like, a lot of people, they do go back home, or, they don't have the resources, or they get impatient. They think that, okay, I went to treatment for 3 months, I'm good. They don't look at the bigger picture. Whereas, like, there's sober living, there's post-treatment and stuff like that programs, right? Transitional, post-treatment, pre-treatment. Myself, I went to, like, like what you mentioned at the beginning, I went to sober living, and I had to, like, stay in that environment. I had to keep myself accountable, because, like I said, 3 months is only the beginning, right? And I knew I had to continue surrounding myself with people that were doing what I was doing, so we could keep each other accountable, and I think that, like, with that, it's kind of like a culture shock too, when they go from such a safe, a safe environment where there's all the supports and you don't have those triggers, and I'm going to say some of the, like, even high risk situations, so with that, them going back there, they struggle, and like, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10 they relapse, or our people, because we're so used to just being with our people and, not really associating ourselves with other races, right? Like other people, like white people and like Filipino and whatever, like all the different people, right? Like, we stick to ourselves the way they do too, right? And so a lot of times, where we have so much intergenerational trauma and addiction and stuff in our life, and our people, it's just normal for us to go back to that and easily fall back into that life, and there's the drugs out there today are so bad that, like, we're losing so many people out there daily.
Yeah, you know it, bro. You know it. And maybe finally, when you look at your recovery, like from the time you started getting sober till today, has it been easy?
Some days are easy, but it hasn't been easy,
So it takes work. What does it take?
It does take work. It takes time. It takes, connection, it takes spirituality,
Looking at yourself a lot.
That's the big thing, right? You need to be willing. You need to be like rigorously honest, with yourself, and you need to be vulnerable, and willing, because if you're not, like, you got to accept things, right? And if you're not willing to do that, like, it's going to be hard to move forward, right? It's going to take you even longer.
Yeah, vulnerability is the relief, and that is the key to the kingdom. The problem with vulnerability is people have been hurt, and so they won't trust. And without the trust, it's like a leap of faith of trust too, where you're really gonna trust somebody that you don't even know what's gonna happen, and that's scary, right? But through vulnerability, all things are possible, and pride and ego get dismantled through vulnerability, right? But if you're not, they kind of solidify themselves and keeps you in a box and keeps you sick.
Yeah, it does. Having the trust in like this complete stranger that they're gonna walk with you on this road, right? It's a big risk, and there's a lot of people that are scared to take that risk, because like you said, we've been hurt, some of us are damaged a lot, but just having that faith, you gotta, at some point in time in your life, you gotta use that faith that you have, and just give it a try,
Yeah.
like 'cause if you don't, you don't know.
And on that journey of having faith and trying, people are going to let us down. People are people.
Yeah,
And what I've learned about the journey is the lesson's always mine.
yeah,
You know, like at first, when I first came into recovery, I put everyone on a pedestal and I thought everyone was spiritual and I thought. And then I journeyed and I was like, these people are just people. And, now they're talking about me, or now they're gossiping, or now they're doing what they said they weren't going to do. And I had to learn that people are people,
yeah,
that I had to learn my lesson through the interaction of life. And through that, like you said, I became accepting of a lot of different things. And there's a lot of freedom in accepting, but it just doesn't come because you think you can accept it, right? It's a process.
it is a process.
Yeah.
100% it is. I remember like sharing on this like last week at a meeting about acceptance, right? Like, and I have to accept that, that it's none of my business what other people think about me, and or what people are saying. I have to be accountable for myself, and I have to accept what I'm doing, and what I've done. Because if I don't, like how am I supposed to go forward if I'm constantly in denial, right? So, accepting things for what they are, and just, finding that right thing that works for you,
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. King, Mr. Russell, we're going to wrap her up. And I just want to thank you for coming and spending time with us again and always being there when I ask or when anyone asks for anything. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So upcoming for the rest of this show, you will see and hear Anna Poucette. She's going to share some of her story and sing a beautiful song. My father, Emile Ward, will cap off the day. And then you will see us all together, as a group and sending you off. So you have an awesome day, and well, thank you. We'll see you again on February 22nd. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, well, we're going to get our next speaker, thank you, September, lined up here. So Anna Poucette is our next speaker. She's going to start with a song. She's a singer, and I know she used to dance as well. Um, she's a mother. She does Indigenous crafts and ribbon skirts and things like that. She comes from a family of singers out in the Good Stony band, and I met her, like I said, about 7 years ago when she was new in recovery. And she will attest to this, I'm sure, in her story. And if not, you can ask her the questions. But it's been a hard journey for her in different aspects of this path, and but there's been so much beauty too, right? From somebody who didn't have their kids to getting them back, and then all these different things. But I know that she always tries to find the bright side, and she always tries to look at life that whatever might seem like it's bad, she knows that nothing bad is in her life to make her life worse. It's actually there to make her life better. And she learns the lesson and grows through it. And she doesn't go through anything anymore. And that's like a pinnacle of recovery and life is we don't need to go through anything. We get to grow through everything. And she is the epitome of that. And that's why she's here today. So, I'm going to let Anna get going. on her song, and then she'll get into her story. So take it away, Anna. Where are you?
Wait, do this. Hello? Hey.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you are. There you are.
Hmm.
Beautiful. Okay, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anna Poucette. Um, so I'm gonna sing a song that I always talk about. I always bring up my youngest daughter, and me and my father were going up to BC, and this was like 3 years ago. We went up to BC to help a family dealing with cancer, and that's what I love to do. I love going with my father to help people and to pray for them and to give them hope. So this song, um, while we were there after the ceremony, my youngest baby, she ran away. She ran away to, I don't know what she was doing because we were trying to tell her to sit still, and she wouldn't listen. Of course, young kids these today they are to listen, but because of her, the song came to me. And on the way coming back, because we found her and we're on our way back, and I was driving in my minivan, but the song, it means have pity on me, but I'm grateful for life. We're all grateful for life. And so such a beautiful song. Way higher, way higher, way higher, way higher. Way higher, 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 way oh hey, oh hey, oh hey, oh yo. Adewakatanga onakesh ishnesh engijabiktats ichogane ona wajikda ikubichan. Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo. Way higher, 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 way higher. Way higher, way higher, way higher, way oh, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo. Adewakatanga oh nakesh ishnish engijabikdat wichogane oh na wajikda ikubitan. Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I don't mean to cry, but in that song, it just means I'm grateful for life. And I thank the creator. Adewanka Tanga means God, creator. And when I sing this song, it just brings so much joy and tear to my life. And because my auntie sang it in Cree, I don't know the Cree word, but when I sing it in Stony, it means so much more because that's part of who I am because I'm Stony. Um, my Indian name is Tani Kashin Kushishan, And my dad always told me that I got Tani Kush from my great great grandma, and that means independence. And Nkushi Shan, I got that name when I was 13. I volunteered myself into uh, a camp for Indigenous community in Morley. I volunteered myself to be a part of their program. And I was 13 when I got Inkushishan, which means ladybug. Inkushi means grandmother bug. And that's how I grow my business too, and using that Stony name. Um, and going back, now I'm gonna start talking about um what it was like when I first started my journey. Growing up, I've been through a lot of trauma. I've been through a lot of physical abuse growing up. Um, I had a rough childhood. I'm not gonna go into detail about it because that's my past, but because of those trauma and abuse that I went through, it made me who I am today. I have forgiveness in my life. And growing up, I was a full-time student. I went to high school, graduated, grade 12, and it was pretty hard, you know, being in high school because I was bullied because of my weight. Um, People didn't like me because I was so close with teachers and like the older people I was so close with. And back then, the younger generation, they used to pick on me a lot. And that was hard too. But that doesn't define who I am today, because now that I look back on it, Creator was teaching me all these lessons. And I didn't know, I didn't understand back then. I always thought that I was the outcast. But what came down to it was I ended up staying with my late uncle and his younger siblings. Um, because my dad was so involved with this lady, and had a traumatic relationship with my dad, and because of this woman, I used to be physically assaulted a lot, and but that was, you know, I think he was just going through his own phase, the loneliness, they talk about the trauma and what they went through in residential school. They don't know how to heal from those unresolved trauma, and what they went through. And at the time I didn't understand. I always wondered, why do I keep getting assaulted? Why do I keep getting treated like this? But everything went well, growing up. My auntie took me in, my uncle, my late uncle, and his siblings. So I had a really good upbringing. We traveled around the world. We went to travel around Turtle Island, and it was really good because I got to see the world. I got to see dancers, and yeah, Bill is correct. I used to dance. I used to dance teen girls traditional, and I placed at many powwows when I was younger. But I still felt very lost at the time. Growing up, I never drank or did drugs. I started when I was 14 years old, when I went to my cousin's house, and that's where it triggered the allergy. It triggered that craving, that spiritual malady, where I became sick and wanted more. I didn't understand that, and that's when my dad said, "Oh, I don't want you touching that fire water. You better come home right now." And so they brought me home at the age of 14. Um, Moving forward, I ran away at the age of 19. I ran away from home and I ended up in Calgary, and that's where I met my children's father. And I thought the whole going from house to house was cool. I used to think that was cool because I didn't know. I was so isolated growing up. I never went anywhere. I was always kept at home, going to school, going to work. Like, I had to grow up fast. But yeah, I just ended up running away. Like I said, I met Garth and we stayed on the reserve for a bit. And everything was going well. Like, he was normal. He didn't have no health problems. Um, what I remember, my daughter, she was only 10 months old, and there's a lot of drinking happening in families, right? And so my brother was one of them. And he got hurt. Something happened, and I ended up going to the hospital with my kid's father because he got injured by my brother. And that was really hard to endure. That was really hard to witness, the violence, the lateral violence, the hurting. And it was really hard to witness that, and I had to be at the hospital, and my youngest baby, and she's 17 now. But looking back, I'm like, wow, I definitely been through a lot growing up. And but it definitely changes my perspective on life, and to be grateful for life. And today, right now, he's still suffering with alcoholism because he has 5 plates in his head. That's my ex. He has 5 plates in his head, and he's immobile on one side from the other. And he still has his moments when he used to threaten me all the time. But now, as I look at it, he's still sick. He's suffering. He's suffering from the spiritual malady. He's suffering himself. And when we go through what we went through in addictions, we lose ourselves, we lose our soul. And I remember back in April 17, 2015, that's when I separated from my kid's dad. And I went down hardcore into alcoholism. That was the year I lost my children to CPS. I didn't know what to do. Um, it brought so much healing. Of course, it taught me lessons that I needed to do. It taught me to not be so vengeful. It taught me to finally listen. And, I know deep down I really wanted my kids back. I really wanted them back. And so I really had to I had to really stop drinking. I had to really stop doing cocaine. And by that time I started realizing that I had a problem is when my kids got taken away. But I didn't. I knew I had a problem, but in my heart I still didn't want to stop. And everything that I did drinking, and that the memory of it is like all the things that had happened I thought I had blocked from my life came back in one instant. Everything I did, who I harmed, everything just came back in one instant. And I was just drinking my life away. I didn't know what to do. But I learned to let go. And I decided this was back in May, before I went to treatment. I went to the CPS office and I talked to this lady, and I went down on my hands and knees and I said, I really want my children back. What do I have to do to get my children back? So she told me. She told me every direction that I had to do, and so I did. Um, I went to a lot of meetings in the city, and I started sharing my story. I didn't know what these meetings were or what they were about. Like, I didn't know anything about the 12 steps. I finally understood. I finally saw the writing in the wall at the treatment center I was going to. And I was like, oh, so that's what it means. Step one. Oh, look, step two. But I didn't know. Like, I just thought it was, oh, well, I just need to pray and everything will work out. But no, it's more to it than that. It's about working on who you're meant to be. And that was the hard part for me because I didn't want to look at myself. I didn't want to see what caused me to go into my addiction, what caused me to lose my children, what caused me to lose my family after everything, and I just couldn't look at myself for days. But I did it. I ended up going straight into recovery and had visitations. They didn't have to court order me to go do these things. I went on my own. And at the time, I was still going to court for custody for my children. So that was pretty hard. But I ended up going back and forth. And finally, I was also in sober living because I didn't want to live with my cousin who was constantly drinking around her kids and her husband. And I didn't want to stay there. So I called a buddy of mine who works at Oxford Housing. Now he's the CEO. And I told him, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm too scared. I'm going to relapse. I know I'm going to relapse. And so within that 3-day time frame, took me he took me to see the place where I'll be staying, and I finally understood that I'm going to be okay. And so I started doing the steps. I started working with a sponsor. I started looking at who I was supposed to be. I was going to school at this time and I was earning income. And I was super proud of myself of how far I was getting. And honestly, I thought that was it. I thought I can only do this once and I'm good. I'm cured. That's not the case. Um, After doing all this work, I ended up at Brenda's housing with my children because I got approved for overnight visits. And that was less than 4 months that I got approved for it. And then afterwards, they told me, okay, in November, we're going to give you back your kids because you're actually working a program. And looking back at it, I'm like, I was still kind of confused about everything about life. I didn't know who to turn to or who to talk to. All I knew was just to go to a meeting and I can just say whatever's on my mind and do what, and I couldn't do it. But in that 6 months time frame, I got my kids back. And I was super proud of myself. And I was reaching that 8 months time frame in January 1st. And I relapsed hard. I ended up falling back into old habits. And it started back where I left off. My kids' grandma came and picked up my son. My sister picked up my girls. And I was back to old habits because I was trying to let a relationship take over my life. Because I got involved with someone new and I thought that life was going good, but it wasn't. It just ended up going back to where I left off. And I knew that I had to let go of the relationship and I had to really work on myself learning to love myself for who I am as an individual. I had to really look deep inside my heart and to find out who Anna really is and to find out what my kids really need. So I ended up staying single through my entire sobriety, and I got sober March 23rd, 2019. And that 6 years is coming up, and I'm super proud of myself because now I fully, I fully give my life to my God, my creator. He helped me see who I'm meant to be. Now I work and I'm grateful for my job. I'm grateful for the people I have met. I'm grateful for reconnecting with the community because last weekend I would have went to a roundup, but I choose to help a community, help teach them to make ribbon skirts. And that was beautiful. And this lady had cancer, and I wanted to do something good for her, because she was giving back to her people, and her nieces and nephews wanted to pass down some teachings. And so I'm grateful that I was able to do that and connect with Sixica elder. And now today I just live my life by hope, faith, and courage, and I try and my best to bring the hope, bring people back from their spirituality, and I sing them songs, like prayer songs, and it's just a beautiful experience, just helping people. And I wouldn't be where I'm at without the love of God and the community that I help. So thank you all for listening. I know it's not much, but I try my best.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much. Yeah, recovery's not an easy road, right? But we know that if we do what's hard, our life does get easier. And doing what's hard isn't easy. It's hard for a reason, right? But
Yeah,
it does make our life so much easier. And none of this journey have you done alone, really, have you?
I
Can't hear you.
no, I usually contact my sponsor when I need help, or I go to my pillars, you know.
Yeah, and you're surrounded by a whole bunch of people that love you and have supported you and
Uh,
and
it brought back
go
my
ahead.
family, right? So yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that you had said, and you just kind of wrapped up with this, is relationships. Like my work with individuals in this way of life is the number one thing that'll take a person back to the drink or the drug is a relationship too early in their recovery.
Yeah.
And you lived that experience, and once you gave that up, which was one of the hardest things you ever did, you were able to stay sober from that point on, correct?
Yeah, it was through COVID, and that was hard because everything was shut down. And so I had to reach out through phone and stuff, and it was yeah, it was pretty hard.
So I know why I think relationships take people back out drinking and drugging. Why do you think it does?
The loneliness. That's what I think it is. It's the loneliness, like, oh no, well, I'm not gonna find anybody to love me, or how can I move on without this person? But in reality, like for me, when I finally let go of that relationship, I really had to put my faith in something else. I had to really put my faith in people that actually cared about me and not use me for a place to sleep or not use me for a place where they can drink and get high. Because I lived around that for a year, and it was really hard to stay sober through that that type of domestic lateral thing. Because when every time he drank, he always get verbally abusive. So I didn't want that, and so I had to really remind myself, okay, do I really want this type of behavior around my children? Do I really want to relive a life that I tried to hide myself from? No, I didn't want that. So I had to really put my faith in God.
And then you were forced to look at yourself,
Yes.
which has been one of the greatest gifts of recovery is the ability to look at ourselves. And I think, a lot through our lives before we come to recovery, we always look at everybody else and what they're doing to us, but you couldn't do that anymore, hey?
No.
Because you were the one making the decisions in your life and there's really no one else to blame,
Yep. I
right?
realized that I was the cause of my own drama, my own chaos.
And that was a tough pill to swallow at first.
Yep. Yeah, I got told by a good friend, he told me at a meeting once and he said, "Man, Bill, boys made you crazy. You were seeking validation." I didn't realize that I had daddy issues, but I did. My father was a single father, raised me since I was 2. My brother, 6 months. I didn't realize that I had issues with the opposite sex, but I overcame it.
No, you're doing great. On this topic of like healing and relationships and why it's so important to stay single for a good chunk of our beginning sobriety is because we don't really know who we are, right? We become who we are in life based on what society tells us we should be, what other people tell us we should be, who we think we should be, and we've never really looked at who we actually want to be, although we know that often we don't want to be who we are, but we don't know how to change that. So through the first year of recovery, there's a deep inner look at oneself. And as the knots within us are loosening so that we can let go of some of these things that like hold us in prison, I would say, the knots loosen and we start feeling relief and freedom from that prison of self, and
Hmm.
we can grow into who we're supposed to grow into. But if we
Yeah.
don't allow those knots to loosen and we get into another relationship too quick, based on the need for validation and all of these things that are in the subconscious, those knots tighten and we stop our healing journey. And because we haven't healed enough, we'll usually go back to the substance, and because we haven't leaned on our creator, just like you said, right? You had to make creator number one and like your relationship
Yep.
with him. What's your most important relationship in the world today?
God.
Yeah.
It's just God and helping people, like helping young
Yeah.
women find out who they are. And with my girls, they see what I'm doing and they're like, "Holy mom, I just said something you said," like people see and people try to "You're a good person, you make me become better." No, that's God. So I
We
put
can't change by ourselves, can we?
no.
Well, I couldn't. Does anyone
I
from the
know.
floor have any questions for Anna? Comments? Okay. So we will move on to our next speaker. Anna, thank you so much. I
Oh,
love you and appreciate you, and thank you for bringing my daughter a ribbon skirt today. She's so generous. She always brings gifts, and I got tons of gifts from Anna over the years, and she's just a beautiful human. Thank you, Anna.
you're welcome. Have a good day.
You too. So thank you, Anna. So our next speaker is my creator. It's my dad. He's partly my creator. You know, someone asked me when was the first sign that your life was going downhill? I said when my dad met my mom. That's a joke. It's a good joke though. I really like that one. But no, seriously, my dad, he's another gift of my recovery. Without my dad, I probably wouldn't be sober today and, living this life that I'm blessed with, the gift of life that I didn't always honor and respect. I really do today. I remember when I was in my addiction and I had my business. I had a business very successful, but I wasn't real happy in my life and I would look at my dad and I'd interact with my dad, and my dad was very humble and very kind and very nice, and I'd always looked at it as a weakness. I'm like, no, I'm never gonna be like that. And then I came into recovery and I always thought, it was that they were negative personality traits. And then I came into recovery and I started like learning about spirituality and looking within myself and realizing my dad was actually an amazing human who was practicing humility, kindness, and compassion. And I looked at that as a weakness because I was so entrenched in the world of the material, in judging others and trying to get and take and pry out of life, that I couldn't see what my dad truly was. And today I do. And like I said, my dad's been a helper for First Nations people for close to 40 years. He's been sober 42 years. Um, he loves his family. He grew up in foster homes and, things like that. And, he's come out the other side in a real, real good way. And he's a great father to me now and great grandfather to my grandbaby with another one on the way. And anyway, Dad, love you. Take it over.
Thank you, son. I'm so proud of you at your accomplishment in your short time in recovery and the passion that I know about because I had it, I felt it, and the Creator gave me that gift of being in this field of helping. And it wasn't my plan. I was making big bucks flying all over the Northwest Territories as a sales rep for an industrial company and flying into Yellowknife and or travel driving into Yellowknife every so often for business, and then I go to the AA meetings, and the director of the treatment center there and the commissioner of the alcohol and drugs in Northwest Territories collaborated with each other, and they decided I should become a counselor. And I was only 3 years sober at the time and having a great life because I was fishing on Mondays, traveling wherever you go, there's a lot of travel wherever you go in Northwest Territories, and fishing all day Monday, work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, come back fishing all the way back to Hay River Friday. Perfect job, you know, and the recovery and just enjoying life. And then they wanted me to become a counselor, and I was still materialistic. And I said, "What do counselors make?" And they told me, and I just laughed at them. A month later, I was a counselor at a treatment center in Yellowknife. And I was assimilated up until then. I was raised as white as you can get, assimilated as you can get. I was taken away from my family. Four of us were taken away because of family disease and abuses and violence and just a lot of chaos in that home, and I didn't know anything about it. And we were taken away and bounced around Edmonton and various locations. The two brothers, younger brothers, were adopted right away, and they went to a really good home in St. Paul, Alberta. And my brother and I went to St. Mary's Boys Home. And that I didn't know is actually what saved my life, because there I found passion in sports and in education. And I guess I was kind of a little brainy because I skipped a couple grades and graduated eventually in 1966, grade 12. And I never had a drink of alcohol because I said I'd never be like my dad, a wife-beating, violent alcoholic, but a hard worker as well. And, I never did. My first drink and was a drunk when I was 19 years old. And then I had alcohol problems. I'm not going to go into great detail with that because I want to spend a little time more on the solution. At 19 years old, I picked up the first drink, went immediately into a blackout, going to the high school dance within 8 blocks from my foster home. And I could never figure out alcohol, uh, how to how to manage alcohol in my life for another 15 and a half years. 5 impaired drivings, domestic violence, all kinds of uh, legal and financial and work-related uh, dysfunction. So, and then in 1980, I met a judge at I must have creator put him then, and I put me in front of this judge because this judge apparently knew about addictions and asked me to whether I want to go back to jail or go to treatment. I never heard about treatment. I'm just trying to manage all my drinking on my own. I did everything in my life on my own. I wasn't about to tell be directed by anybody how to run my life. But I found out the union would give me $200 a week to relax and enjoy 6 weeks of relaxing at a treatment center. And here I am, 44 years later, because of what I learned about an illness. I knew nothing. And when I found out about this disease, all that hate and all that confusion and all that pain as a direct result of interactions with families during those drunken parties and abuses, was prime, big part of it was forgiven because I understood alcoholism. And I loved my brothers and sisters. I loved my mom. I hated my dad, and but I understood a lot of what happened was because of this illness called addiction, called alcoholism. And from that point on, I really didn't believe that I would be able to stay sober, and I didn't want to anyway. I still wanted to have fun, and I couldn't handle that word forever. Forever quitting drinking it, and 'cause that was my fun life, trying to be my fun life, but it never worked. Very seldom did I ever have a good time with alcohol. Anyway, I went into a solution in third year of my sobriety, like I said, when those two people decided I should become a counselor. And I went into Northern Addiction Services in Yellowknife. I became a counselor, and 2 weeks later, they hired an Nakota Sioux elder to teach us about the medicine wheels, 10 medicine wheels during the 3 days. And I'm sitting there in that group with still so much prejudice against my own people. I lost a lot of teeth over Blackfoot people down in southern Alberta in the bars, and my quick lip got me into a lot of trouble in many areas, and police knocked out a few too. And anyway, regardless, so I was very prejudiced against my own people. And here I'm sitting in a treatment center that helps Slavies and Dog Rib and Crees and Inuit and Slavey and all of these types of First Nation peoples in this treatment center. And I thought, what am I going to do now? Okay, well, Creator has a good sense of humor. And there I was sitting there with all of this surrounded and being taught by the Nakota Sioux elder. But he was the one that identified how lost I was in my own identity. He saw through the white personality and realized how really lost I was. And this was a former AA member, and he found his solution, his recovery in Kingston Penitentiary. He was one of the pioneers of what we know as the Native Brotherhood in correction systems. And there he was teaching me about, trying to teach me about my own identity, and went to my first pipe ceremony, and that's another story. But that's how it started. Was he kept pestering me with questions about me and my culture and how I was raised and what my beliefs were, and wow, you know. And finally, and then I had a powerful director. I didn't know it at the time, but um, I became passionate about helping people now that I'm a counselor, saving people. So, and after a few months of that, she called me into the office and said, Emile, how many meetings you doing? How many meetings are you chairing? I said, well, I chair two. How many are you going to? I go just about every day. Have you got any sponsors? Yeah, I sponsor two people. And he says, well, the way you're going to help this many people. If you shut up and listen, you're going to help this many people. So I shut up and listened. And she said, you have to be the wellest of the well to treat the sickest of the sick. I never really understood it at the time. But, you know, it, so she tuned up my program. She told me to cancel you're sponsoring, she says, you're sponsoring 10 people in this treatment center right now. You need all the energy for them. And AA's been running here for Yellowknife for 50 years, so we don't need you to anymore for those two meetings, so somebody else will do them. And on and on and on. She just guided me right into how to become an effective helper. Moving fast forward, I couldn't live without my boys up there, so my lady and I decided that we'd move back to Alberta. So we came back and ended up working in a place called Native Addiction Services in Calgary, Native Alcoholism Services in Calgary, and that's where my career started. Basically, really kicked off. And shortly after that, I was chosen to be the number. I was chosen. We did a lot of personal growth training at that time, healing. So I got a definite picture of what healing looked like, because as a helper at Nietzsche Institute, it's a Native Institute for addiction counseling, Native addiction counselors, and we had to do our own healing. We had to do our own healing to become effective helpers. So I was very, very fortunate to get a kickstart two ways: my healing and my 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and my healing as a helper, to become a effective helper. So I was very, very fortunate at the beginning of my career. And very shortly, I became a senior counselor at Palmakers. 2 years later, I became a director, started my directing of treatment centers. And back then, there was a lot of flexibility with what we call Alberta Health Services. Back then, it was called ADAC. And there was a lot of flexibility, because we had native funded agencies that were under that provincial funding programs, and they let us try certain ways of intervening in this alcoholism and addiction that was in our communities. And some of them, for example, were I was the treatment director of the first mobile treatment program on a local reserve in Alberta. We took that program from 100% alcoholism, their average life expectancy when they did the feasibility study was 85, was the life expectancy was 24 years old in that community at that time. And we took them from that to 80, from 100% alcoholism to 85% sobriety in 5 years, you know, on the model that was used at Alkali Lake at the time, which took them 14 years. We learned what they did, and they helped us actually, came down and gave us the support. And just another project was as a treatment director of Bonnyville Treatment Center in Bonnyville. We in the summer we turned that program into adolescent treatment for 2 months, for youth from 5 reserves and 2 Métis settlements there. So, and the kids ran their own program. All my staff did was just kind of supervise things. And the kids designed their own program, and they facilitated it and they supervised it. It was just amazing. It was an amazing project. We took 10 kids from the Ochis Reserve and brought them in for sniffing program. We put together a sniffing program between each institute and Poundmaker Lodge, and we delivered to them in a 28-day program. And well, 4 of them ran away with a very short time, but 6 of them graduated, and these 6 cleaned up a lot of stuff in their own community, and with sniffing. And so just so many different projects. I can't even list them all here in a short time, but there was just so much pioneering going on back then. I was my co-workers had experiences from all across Canada. Some from Ontario, Thunder Bay. One certain person had so much experience in helping people already, and it was a staff there. Another lady had traveled all over northern Canada doing research with Native women's issues. So there was just so much passion and learning. It was just so exciting, and and I was just saturated with alcohol and drugs, and my creator designed this life for me to be in that, so I could get my recovery face to face every day, 5 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week in the adolescent treatment center I was a director of. That was a most that was one of the most what do you call energy draining projects I ever, but so enjoy. It was just so important at that time to somehow intervene on these young people. And I just want to share a little bit about what we heard about today, the families that our speakers have talked about. And I was no different. I was one of them. And one of the biggest things that I learned in through my career is imprints. The imprints, uh, I was imprinted about addictions. I was imprinted by violence. I was imprinted by there's so much in what I call dysfunctional teachings as a child. And I was only I don't even remember exactly how old I was when I was taken away, but I was already already designed to or imprinted with all of this trauma and learned behavior. That's all it was learned behavior. And we as parents, I didn't understand these things. I had to learn. I had to relearn how to live in a sober way. I had to relearn how to be a parent. All my skills I learned in the bars. How to be in a relationship. How to be a parent. It just financial skills. I'll learn from the bars, right? So it just right out of so I was fortunate to have a good couple good foster homes, and my foster brother's still part of my life today. He's out in BC in Okanagan Valley, and we work, interact on Facebooks. We still love each other very much, and I don't know. Next year, next month, or a month from today, I'll be celebrating 45 years of recovery, and 42 of it has been in helping field. You know, people teaching me how to become a helper, people trusting me to share the most intimate parts of their traumas. And another project that was another co-facilitator here from Calgary, her and I got together and we designed a program and we did a workshop with 12 First Nations people on Vancouver Island. And these people never spoke English. A lot of them didn't speak English, didn't understand English, but the tears are universal. And we gave them a chance just to cry about their residential experiences. They never got that chance before. That's not that long ago. We got a long ways to go. And we got helpers like my son and so many others that are taking over with this new, with this, I'm old school. I'm old school addictions. People like my son and Russell and Ryder, these people know intimately, personally, the horrors of the streets, the horrors of these horrible drugs that are killing our people, the statistics of suicide and overdoses and oh man, I didn't really care for technology. My last career 9 to 5 job was in the first Indigenous treatment center in Canada was Pritchard House in Winnipeg. I ended up there trying to intervene on my other son's addiction, and to visit him, and ended up working in treatment center there till COVID. COVID hit, and they tried to make me work on this kind of computer here. Helping people. And now decided to retire, and I came back, you know, and I tried to retire, but some people here knew about my career and my experiences, and I'd worked with one of the agencies called Miscano here in Calgary. I worked with that CEO 3 times in his actually his third time I worked in his organization. So he pulled me out of retirement basically, and became a elder support worker. I'm not really an elder. I'm really more of an older, but my experience with men's work and with domestic violence and with addictions, of course, he thought I could help some people in his agency, and it's just a big part of my life right now. And I do some anger work with a treatment center here in Calgary. And I do, hey, there's a new one. The Canadian government is opening their doors to ceremonies, smudge ceremonies, prayer ceremonies, all kind of Indigenous participation. So I'm welcoming new Canadian citizens as part of their welcoming ceremonies. So there's so many projects still happening for me, and I still get enough time to relax and enjoy my retirement. And it's been a fantastic career, but everyone I always say, there was a time and uh, well, when I was running that adolescent treatment center, I got one revelation. There's all these systems of how to work with teenagers, and Yeah, whenever there's incidents, I I didn't use the skills of the intervention skills and the communication skills and exploring skills that I learned in programs. I went to the cook. The cook could get more information out of these kids with a hamburger than I ever could with all of these skills. Isn't that real? Isn't that real? So pretty cool. Just learning. We never know how we're going to affect people, but we directly affect at least 6 people. And we try to walk this path of recovery, where when we can be walking sermons, right? Rather than hammering down, you got to do this, you got to do that. There's in AA, there's things called attraction rather than promotion. Okay, walking a good, healthy life, and standing by that person in pain, and maybe asking a feeling question: How can I help? What are you going through right now? What are you feeling? Any uh, any way to try to intervene in that person's life, and somehow give a message. We always say we can always tell an alcoholic, you just can't tell them much. So, but we can, uh, we can, what do we call? The other saying is, you can't lead a horse to water. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Yes, you can lead him to. You can't make him drink, but you make him damn thirsty. And that's what we do by leaving pamphlets around, by getting excited about some learning that you and statements that can create thinking for people. And there are just so many ways that we can, but we have to be open to learn for ourselves. And that's all I wish for all of you is, we're all in this together. For those of you listening and watching, I just want to do a little exercise. Never done this over Zoom. Okay, so I just want to do a little exercise, one of the most impacting little exercises that I ever experienced in my training. I just want you to cup your hands like this. Cup your hands like this. Okay. Now imagine a loved one or children in the palms of your hand, sitting in the palm of your hand. Close your eyes. Visualize these people or young children in the palms of your hands, a person that you love. Get a sense of your feeling, how much you feel for these people. Look at their eyes, their hairstyle, their facial expressions, their mouth, their nose, their chin, everything about them. You get a deep sense of how much you care and love about these people. And now imagine another set of hands. What do you want? Imagine what you want for these children or these people that you love for their future. What do you want for their future? Things like safety, happiness, love, freedom, and anything else that you can think of, because that's what we really want for people that we love. And now imagine another set of hands underneath yours, the hands of the Creator, wanting the exact same things for you. How can we not if we're a child of our Creator? You can open your eyes now. Thank you for that exercise. Hi, hi. Wow. Gee. That's all I got, son. Wow.
That's quite a bit, and that was pretty amazing, Dad. Holy smokers. Whew.
Hey, that's what I prayed for. So
Oh, that
well,
was so beautiful.
thanks.
Um, yeah, I got right into that and I pictured it all. And when you said the part about picture the second set of hands underneath yours, and that's what the creator, those are the creator's hands, and that's what he wants for you. It's like, whoa, that's trippy. Um, Dad, something you said there was you know, the attraction, not promotion, and then talked about like living a good life, like a good, authentic life of integrity and like going that way. And that's really the attraction of recovery, right? And that's what works for the most part. And you talked about, you know, saying things that make people think. And by living a certain way and talking and saying things, people think about their own life, right? When somebody's healthy and happy and they're doing this deal, they'll say things that people think about, right? And when it's coming from a place of love and purpose, it actually pierces the pride and it hits their heart. And even though they might not like it at first, that those words don't go away. They're there the whole time. And yeah, that was beautiful. And then what I wanted to say on that note was I went to pick willows one of the first times I was helping with the sweat lodge. We had to do a tear down and rebuild the new sweat lodge. And my teacher, my elder at the time, you know, we had picked some of these willows and he's like, no, that willow's not going to do. And we were like, well, why? He's like, because it's too crooked. He said, we as people, we're represented by this willow and we want to find the straightest willow because we want to live a straight life. And even when we put the wood around the fire at the one lodge, he always made us put the wood standing up the way that the tree would grow because he wanted us to learn like we grow straight and we grow towards creator, not to put the wood upside down. And you know, the red road is it's a hard road, right? Not everyone joins the red road. It's a road of sobriety and it's a hard road. And like recovery is hard. And what I love about recovery and all the principles that we try to live by is they're all native spirituality. You know, it's, you know, our ways of life or our ways of knowing and remind you all that I didn't even find these ways till 10 years ago, 9 years ago. I didn't even know one Indigenous person in my life until I was 42 years old. I didn't want to. And now I know hundreds, and I'm so proud of being First Nations, and a lot of that comes from you, Dad. So, what I want to ask you is on your journey, what has been some of the hardest parts of your journey?
Well, the hardest part was the mobile treatment. That was 3 years of planning, 28-day delivery. That's all the treatment was. We had a camp set up right in the middle of the reserve, and none of the band members or family members were able, were we had security to keep the family out of the camp, and these 28 or these, I can't even remember how many, it was about 25 of them, I guess. And we spent a week together in the camp before the treatment started, and we had fires, we had circles, we had feasts, we had all of this bonding going on, and wow. And that was a lot of work after and then going into treatment, it was more of a healing treatment center than this teaching and academic. It was more a constant, more of that circle healing that because there was just so much trauma and violence and relationship issues and parenting and it was on our day off I worked 20 hours and just 28 days of uh, very tiring and rewarding work and then another 2 years of aftercare with the abuses, therapy with professionals. We had training counselors and we had therapists, professional therapists coming in to do 2 years of healing work as well, continued work. And yeah, that was the hardest work. And then the that um I the project that we did in Vancouver Island, there was two facilitators. We had a couple other helpers from that local community, and there was 12 nations around there, and they sent all of these old elders, elderly people that never experienced a circle, never experienced any kind of healing, and just to be able to try to have them trust us that they just came not knowing what was going to happen. They just wanted to share with somebody about their experience in residential school. So we had to work through a little bit of interpreters, but mostly I didn't understand them a lot. I just guide them in my best way to their personal healing, the venting that they need to do, the permission to cry and experience their feelings that they'd had stuffed so much. And that's not uncommon to this day. It's still, the trust level that needs to happen for our the victims of violence, the victims of abuses, for them they've shut down those feelings for so long. Residential school, I met the Acfn worker I was still doing drugs and drinking at that time in 1974, and I met him, and he says, uh, we were thinking of self-government at that time, and he said, we're not healthy enough to have self-government. If the government was smart, they'd give us self-government. We'd screw it all up. We would want them to take it back, and then we'd be in a worse fix. That was a political statement, but he said 3 generations, at least 3 generations before we become well enough to manage our own government. So I don't know. It made sense at the time, and I'm seeing it as well. But we got a heck of a movement going on, with just in the 40 some years the pioneers, even pioneers before me. Don't forget, the first treatment center that ever happened was in 1969 when there was a Hopi, what do you call the one of the Hopi uh, had written about Native people going into the dark for 200 years, and that they would come into the light when the eagle lands on the moon. In 1969, what was it? Anyway, when he landed on the moon, Neil Armstrong, his first words were, "The eagle has landed." The following year, the first treatment center in the United States was formed. And ours came later on in 1972 with Pritchard House. But since then, we've been on the road toward wellness, and the doors are opening to be able to do it our ways. So like CFS, for example, it took 1974, Richard Cardinal hung himself after being placed in 27 situations, foster homes, and took his own life. And that became a public issue all over Canada on CBC News, and Canada became aware of that system that Richard Cardinal went through. And here we have a Native unit in Calgary at 10th Avenue because we have a different way of taking care of our children. And I sat in that committee for a few years with my present CEO. So things are blossoming in good ways, and we just got to keep going and just we're on our way to healthy recovery.
Awesome, Dad. And I'll finish with this. Like, I work in a lot of nation communities. I've helped a lot of, like, let's just say, non-Indigenous people and Indigenous people. And what I've learned, the data that I've collected through working with non-Indigenous people and Indigenous people, is the concrete of pride, ego, and pain is so much thicker and harder to get through than it is with the regular person who suffers from addiction. And when I think about alcoholism or addiction or the spiritual malady, once that person crosses the line from a heavy drinker to a real alcoholic or addict, then to me there's like 10 levels in that real deal alcoholic zone. And most people I found, I'm going to say they're probably in the first four, the first four levels of that, the pain and guilt and ego and trauma. Whereas I found most First Nations people, they're on the far scale. They're like between a 5 and a 10. And sometimes I can't even chip through some of the pain and the ego because the ego's so strong and the pain's so thick and you just can't get anywhere. And so it's like not all of our people even have the opportunity to get help because that concrete is so thick and so hard. But that doesn't mean that we stop trying, right? That doesn't mean we stop trying. So through the words, through the attraction, through, you know, things like what Acfn's doing here, things like what I do when I travel around and do what I do and what you do in these treatment centers, and non-Indigenous people, learning about the doctrine of discovery, colonialization, and then seeing the truth and then helping support, like my buddy Robbie, he runs Sober Crew, and a lot of the churches are very supportive and helping, right? And
Mhm.
and 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 that's part of like what our medicine wheel teaches us. Like it's all our relations, and even though a lot of bad things, seemingly bad things, have happened to us, you talked about the prophecy where 200 years of darkness and coming out, and it was to end when the eagle landed on the moon. That was talked about way, way a long time ago. And it talked about the web, right? In Wellbriety, they talk about this web, and it turns out it's the interweb. It's the internet, right? And those are all prophecies in the Wellbriety teachings that actually have played themselves out. And, so it is happening. And
Mhm.
I'm just very grateful I am grateful alcoholic, grateful addict. I'm grateful you were an addict and alcoholic. I might have been resentful for a long time, but now I'm very grateful. And like, they have an opportunity to use my greatest deficit of my life to become my greatest asset. And that's what we do. And when you look at people that really help in the world, typically they've been to hell. So they come out of hell, and because they survived, they kind of do creator's work from there, and it's just a beautiful thing. So does anyone have any questions or comments for Emile, even though I got him labeled as Anna? But I'm not worried because my editor is going to overlay those things. But is there anyone that has a comment or question for Emile? Go ahead, Kayla.
Hello. Hi, I'm Kayla. I am in recovery and I've applied to and I'm about to interview to be a peer support worker at the treatment center that I went to. And I was wondering if you had any advice for me or anyone else about to embark.
Was that a peer or beer?
Peer.
Okay. Like I said, with the analogy of the horse leading the horse to water, uh, and what my son reiterated, how strong the how deep the trauma and how deep the pains are in working with people is a, a lot of it's going to be dependent on your personality.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
We are go by attraction rather than promotion, right?
mhm,
It you know it and planting those seeds, the right words. Father Martin years ago was interviewed by a reporter, and he's one of the pioneers of AA, and they asked him, uh, "Is there anything that we could do that would help people to stay sober?" And he says, the right words at the right time in the right way. We can
mhm,
we can save millions, you know.
mhm,
So it's just taking this bag of tools, your gifts that the Creator's given you, that good part of a helper. That's what you know. That's what I grasped onto with my coworkers and trainers and the people that were already in the pioneers in the helping field already. That it was the attraction of and how they talked to people, how they uh, had their system of intervening in this person's thinking or way of life. Or it could be a joke, could be a comment, could be a reality story. Don't forget, our elders used to tell us stories. That's how they taught us. They wouldn't tell you what to do. They would tell you a story, and from that story, you would get some kind of learning. So,
mhm,
yeah, just uh, just use that personality that I can see already in your face.
mhm.
No, you won't have any problems at all with helping people.
Mm,
Yeah,
Thank you.
and you get discouraged once in a while. That's part of it,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
So
mhm.
yeah, never give
Thank
up.
thank you so much.
You got a great career coming.
Thank you.
Remember who you work for. You work for Creator.
Yeah,
When we remember who we work for, it doesn't matter who gives us our paycheck. When we work for Creator, we always get what we need. But we got to do our part and stay close to Him and perform His work well.
yeah.
Thank you, Caleb.
It's also like like I said, I'm old school. Um, the reality is these drugs, especially addicts, alcoholics, or you have a little more time to work with. Addicts that are in a serious grip with some of these oxycontin and fentanyl and cocaine. And these are, we don't have much time to pussyfoot around. So get as well educated as you can about these drugs. Talk to people like my son and Russell and these kind of people. Don't be afraid to pick their brains of, or even go on a 12-step call with somebody like that can help you out. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Thank you.
and just smudge,
Mhm,
smudge and
mhm.
pray before you go, right? And
Yeah.
after you're finished.
Yeah. I really connected to when you said that the helpers, we need to be really well, and like really prioritize that if
Hmm.
we're going to go in and help others get well. So that's something that I'm really going to be holding on to as I potentially embark on this. Yeah. Hmm.
Another thing that Father Martin taught me in a video was uh, that an alcoholic 3/4 drunk can determine whether you genuinely care or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Hmm.
Don't forget how intelligent alcoholic drug addicts are.
Oh, yeah.
With
Yeah.
no money, how did they get high?
Yeah. Yeah. We're a brilliant lot for sure.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. If is there anyone else that wants to comment to Emile before I turn the program somewhere else? Okay. Okay, Dad, just so Emile, Dad, we're gonna move on to the next piece. So if you can you know,
I'm out of here.
mute you. Thank you, Dad. And your camera. So I missed recording the first two participants for the most part, September and Ryder King. And I've asked them if I can record them separately next week. So what I'm going to do is they're going to come into my studio. We're sitting in a podcast studio, actually. I'm not using all the equipment in the studio today, but I will use the equipment and I'm going to get them back and they're going to fulfill those spots that I didn't record. And I will send it to my video editor and we will piece their stories back in. And my apologies to that. But we will have it as part of the video that we turn over to Claudia and Acfn. So, and I will also do another opening prayer and an opening statement to begin that session with as well. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to just shut the camera off and we're going to get set up. And my daughter's going to come in and stand with us while we kind of give you a message of hope to leave with one at a time, and then my daughter will finish us off with a song, some type of a song that she's chosen. So we'll be right back. Just hang tight. Give us like 15, 20 seconds. Actually, Claudia, would you like to say a few words before we close this down?
Hi there. So this is Claudia from ACFN. I would just like to thank all of the speakers, like everything and every time that I join. And this has been our second session. And each time that I join in, I am just so moved by everyone and touched, especially touched by everyone's story and just I get misty eyed and actually I'm sitting here with my camera might be blackened out, but it's just very emotional. So thank you for everyone for being so vulnerable to share your stories with us. And it just means so much to know that we're not alone in our journeys to recovery. And a special thank you to each writer, Anna, September, Emile, and all the beautiful songs and uh, facilitator Bill for your Sundance pipe song as well. So Marcy Cho for all of that. Thank you.
Oops. Sorry about that. Um, just a heads up, we will be doing another one of these on the 22nd of February. I believe it'll be the same time slot, noon till 3 o'clock. You can confirm that, Claudia?
So the date that you proposed is great, and what we like to do is just to keep it consistent, so that we generate more interest, and as the word gets out that we're doing these sessions I'd also like to share that these posters can go out far and wide. It's not just meant for ACFN. As we know, addictions and recovery, reach all of our communities, big or small. And yeah, so feel free to share it with anyone. If it's someone that we can help out there, we're all essentially one large Indigenous family together. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Claudia. Okay, so give us like 15 seconds and I'll get set up here and then we will say our outs and get Lucy to sing a song. Hang tight one.
Ken?
Just kidding. Okay, September, you're probably blocked a little bit by the camera, but that's okay. Okay, so I just want to say thank you, everybody, from our little family that we're gathered here today. There is hope, and just don't ever give up. That's the lesson for me today. Hi, thank you.
Well, for someone that's under the influence of alcohol or drugs right now, get stupid and save your life. Graveyard's full of smart alcoholics. That's one of the first things that I knew was directed right at me from a tape that I heard, because we think that we're in charge of everything in our life. But like my son said, it's the drug or the alcohol that's really in charge. So enjoyed the session today. Creator bless you all. Hey.
Trust Creator and love yourself, because we're all one as individuals, and just trust the process and do what's hard, because in those lessons it becomes who we are. Snish, hi.
No matter what happens in life, what road you go down, no matter if life kicks you down, just pick yourself back up, reach out for help. If you're struggling, there's a world of people that care for you and they're willing to help you overcome that fear and take your life back and continue on that strong journey and start walking the red road together. Hi.
Hi.
To everybody that's out there, appreciate your time and effort to be part of the Zoom meeting. Always put Creator first in your life, whether you're an addict or not, or a family member that's struggling to understand your family. You're not alone. There's always help out there. You can always reach out to anybody, like one of us or anyone that you know. And the thing is that don't fear anything. You have the ability to say, I need help. It's
Right.
just, and you take care, and then I'll see you again, which in my language would be Honchimazo. Take care.
Yes. Lucy. What do you make us about this? Go ahead. What's from there?
I'm going to sing the Woman's Warrior song. Hey, 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 yeah, hey, yo, ho. Yeah, hey, yo, hey, hey, yeah, hey, yo, yeah, hey, yo, hey, hey, yeah, hey, yo, hey, hey, hey. Yeah, hey, yo, yeah, hey, yo, hey, hey, yeah, hey, yo, yeah, hey, yo, hey, hey, yeah, hey, yo, hey, hey, hey. Yeah, hey, yo, yeah, hey, yo, hey, hey, yeah, hey, yo, yeah, hey, yo, hey, hey, yeah, hey, yo, hey, hey, hey.
E-I-E-I-O, E-I-E-I-O, hey, hey, E-I-E-I-O. Thank you.
Marcy Cho.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Get 'em on in.